Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it.
The scent of roasted turkey and cinnamon-sweetened yams filled the air as I set the last dish on the table. The dining room was bathed in the soft glow of candlelight, flickering against the polished wood, reflecting off the glassware I had bought myself. The warmth of the setting should have felt comforting, but something gnawed at the back of my mind. I sat down, smoothing the napkin over my lap, as my father, Richard, took his place at the head of the table. My mother, Evelyn, offered a weak smile, her eyes darting nervously between us. Ted, my younger brother, was already piling food onto his plate, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing. We had barely begun eating when my father cleared his throat, a sharp, deliberate sound. The room tensed. "Jasmine," he said, setting down his fork with a clatter. "It's time we had a serious conversation." I felt my stomach tighten. "About what?" "You need to move out." His voice was calm, matter-of-fact, as if he were commenting on the weather. I blinked, trying to process his words. "Move out," I echoed. "Why?" He leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. "Because it's time. You've been here long enough." I let out a humorless laugh. "I pay the rent, the electricity, the groceries. I cover everything, Dad. You wouldn't have this meal in front of you if it weren't for me." "That's not the point." His jaw tightened. "This is our house. You've overstayed your welcome. It's time for you to stop acting like a burden." A burden. The word sliced through me, leaving behind an aching numbness. I turned to my mother, searching for some kind of support, but she only stared down at her plate, pushing mashed potatoes around with her fork. "Mom," I prompted, my voice quieter now. She hesitated before mumbling, "Maybe. Your father has a point. You're an adult, Jasmine." I let out a sharp breath. "An adult who supports this entire household." I turned to Ted. His fork was frozen midair, his eyes wide. "This doesn't make sense," Ted finally spoke. "Jasmine pays for everything. You need her." My father's face darkened. "Watch your tone, Theodore." Ted looked at me, his concern evident. "Jazz." I forced a tight smile. "It's fine, Ted." I straightened my spine, meeting my father's cold gaze. "If that's how you feel, then fine. I'll leave." My father nodded in satisfaction. My mother finally looked up, guilt flashing across her face, but she said nothing. Dinner continued as if nothing had happened, but I had already lost my appetite. I packed in silence. The only sound in my room was the dull scrape of zippers and the occasional rustling of clothes being folded into my suitcase. Ted hovered in the doorway, arms crossed, his brows furrowed. "This is insane," he muttered. "They're throwing you out like you're some freeloader, when you're the one keeping everything running." I zipped up my bag, forcing a small smile. "Apparently, I'm a burden." "That's bull," he snapped. "And you know it." I sighed, sitting on the edge of my bed. "It doesn't matter, Ted. They've made their decision." He shook his head. "So what's your plan?" "I'm staying with Isla for now, just until I find my own place." Ted exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "You know they won't last without you, right? The bills, the food, all of it. Dad's not going to magically figure out how to manage." A flicker of something bitter curled inside me. "That's not my problem anymore." A heavy silence settled between us before he finally spoke again. "Are you going to cut them off?" I met his gaze. "I have to." I had already pulled up my bank's website on my phone. With a few taps, I removed my name from the electricity, water, and internet bills. The rent payments stopped next. The next morning, I didn't say goodbye. I wheeled my suitcase down the driveway, feeling the crisp morning air bite at my skin. No one came to stop me. No one called my name. I reached the curb, where Isla was already waiting in her car. She leaned over and pushed open the passenger door. "You ready?" I took one last glance at the house, the place I had held together for so long. Then I slid into the car and shut the door behind me. "Yeah," I said. Let's go. 3 days passed in silence. No calls, no messages. I expected my father to be too proud to admit he had made a mistake. My mother, perhaps too ashamed. But on the 4th day, the dam broke. My phone buzzed violently against the kitchen counter while Isla and I were finishing dinner. When I saw my mother's name flashing on the screen, I almost let it go to voicemail. But curiosity got the better of me. I answered, "Hello. Jasmine, please, you have to help us." My mother's voice was frantic, thick with barely restrained panic. "The power's been shut off. And the internet, your father can't even watch his shows." I closed my eyes, inhaling sharply. "So pay the bills." A stunned silence stretched between us. Then she whispered, "We don't have the money." A sharp, humorless laugh escaped me. Not my problem. But I hung up. My hands trembled, but I set the phone down, ignoring the way my heart hammered in my chest. Isla raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess, they're panicking." I nodded. "Power's out. Internet's down. They finally noticed I was paying for everything." She smirked, stabbing at her pasta with her fork. "You'd think your dad would be too stubborn to call." I let out a breath. It wasn't him. It was my mother. Isla's expression darkened. Of course. She always lets him do the damage, then tries to clean it up after. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed again. A notification flashed across the screen. "Fraud alert. Unusual login attempt detected on your bank account." A chill spread through me. I clicked on the message, pulse spiking as I saw the details. Someone had tried to access my savings. Someone from my parents' address. My stomach twisted in disgust. I exhaled slowly, then turned to Isla. "They tried to get into my account." She set down her fork. "You're kidding." I shook my head. Her lips curled in fury. "Jasmine, you need to shut them out completely. Change every password. Freeze your accounts if you have to." I was already opening my banking app. "I'm on it." I locked down everything. New passwords, security alerts, 2-factor authentication. By the time I was done, my hands had steadied, but my anger hadn't faded. My father had declared me a burden, thrown me out like I was nothing. And now, instead of admitting fault, he was trying to steal from me. I clenched my jaw. If he thought this was over, he was dead wrong. The call from Ted came late at night. My phone buzzed insistently on the nightstand, dragging me from the edge of sleep. I squinted at the screen, his name flashing in panic. I answered instantly. "Ted." His voice was hushed but urgent. "Jasmine, Dad's furious. He found out you cut the accounts. He's blaming you for everything." I sat up, heart pounding. "Let me guess. He's not taking responsibility." Ted gave a bitter laugh. "Not even close. He's saying you're punishing the family, that you want us to suffer." A pause, then a lower, more fearful whisper. "He's talking about doing something." I slid down my spine. "Doing what?" "I don't know, but he's not just yelling anymore. He's calculating." I swallowed hard. My father had never been physically violent, but his cruelty had always been sharp, precise, cutting in ways that left permanent wounds. "I need you to stay away from him," I said firmly. "And if he gets worse, call the police." Ted hesitated. "He won't hurt me." I exhaled sharply. "He might not. But that doesn't mean he won't try to hurt me." Silence. Then, finally, "Be careful, Jasmine." I ended the call, my pulse drumming in my ears. Across the room, Isla sat up in bed, watching me carefully. "It's getting worse, isn't it?" I nodded. "I think he's about to do something drastic." Her eyes darkened. "Then we need to be ready." I didn't sleep that night. The pounding on Isla's apartment door came just after midnight. Each slam rattled the walls, the rage behind it unmistakable. "Jasmine, open this damn door." My father's voice was raw, livid. "You think you can walk away from me?" Isla bolted upright, fear flashing in her eyes. I grabbed my phone, my fingers steady despite the dread coiling in my stomach. "I'm calling the police," I whispered. Another violent kick. The doorframe groaned. Ted's warning echoed in my mind. He's calculating. This wasn't blind fury. He had tracked me here. "Jasmine," his voice twisted with venom. "You ungrateful little." Sirens split the night. Red and blue lights painted the walls as tires screeched outside. Heavy boots pounded up the stairs. A loud, commanding voice. "Step back. Hands where we can see them." Seconds stretched like hours. Then a scuffle. A sharp curse. And finally, silence. I exhaled, my grip on the phone slackening. A knock, this time measured. "Miss Carter." A firm voice called. "It's over. He's in custody." I looked at Isla, my chest rising with something unfamiliar. Not fear, not anger. Relief. For the first time in my life, I was free. I thought my father's arrest would be the end of it. I was wrong. 2 days later, a fraud alert pinged on my phone. A transaction flagged under my name, an attempt to sell my car. My car that was still parked outside Isla's apartment. My stomach turned. No. I dialed the dealership listed on the alert. "That sale isn't authorized," I said, my voice sharp. "Strange," the man replied. "Your mother claimed you gave her power of attorney." I hung up and called the police. Again. By the time officers arrived at my parents' house, my laptop was already listed online for sale. My mother feigned innocence, hands clasped, voice trembling. "It's a misunderstanding," she pleaded. The officers weren't convinced. Neither was I. That was the final straw. I withdrew my last traces from their lives, my name from the lease, my contact from every shared account. I blocked their numbers, deleted their messages. Ted called once. "Are you sure about this?" I swallowed hard. Yes. For years, I had been their provider, their scapegoat, their possession. Now, I was nothing to them. And that was exactly how I wanted it. For the first time, I truly belonged to myself.
Friends, what do you think of this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Would you like more stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss any videos. See you tomorrow.